Take it easy. Karibu sana Tahira, karibu sana Simran. What you were doing before you got into the tea business and how you decided to get into the tea business.
And so we thought, okay, hang on, this is something that we could work on. You know, changing the genetics is a long-term project where you have to do seedlings and grafting, and that will take many, many years. Changing the post-harvest handling was something that we thought we could get a handle on.
So that's the reason why we named it Kazietu. We never want to forget our North Star, which is job creation.
A podcast where we hope to speak and learn from inspiring individuals who align with the Rosho ethos, eat healthy, live healthy, think healthy, and just generally be the best versions of ourselves. Hi everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Rosho podcast, a podcast where we hope to speak and learn from inspiring individuals who align with the Rosho ethos, which is to eat healthy, live healthy, think healthy, and just generally be the best versions of ourselves as possible. So today we'll be brewing some tea and unwrapping some chocolate because I have the immense pleasure of hosting some of the most inspiring entrepreneurs I have met in Tanzania. Karibu sana Tahira, karibu sana Simran. It's really a huge pleasure. And this means a lot to us, first of all, for you to make the time to come and do the podcast with us. I know you guys have a very busy schedule. You guys are doing so much. We try to keep up, but it's hard. There's a lot you guys are doing. But yeah, it means a lot for you to make the time and join us at the podcast. So before we get into the conversation, I'd just like to get, for the listeners, just get the professional bios out of the way. So we have with us Tahira, who is the co-founder and managing director of Kazietu alongside her husband, Hendrik. Tahira is the visionary behind the company. She's driving its mission to bring premium Tanzanian tea to the world whilst empowering local communities. She's also an international development expert. She's worked on projects to promote economic inclusion and job creation in places like Afghanistan and East Africa. And this I can attest to. She's deeply committed to social impact. Karibu sana Tahira. We also have Simran, who's the co-founder at Cocoa Kamili alongside Brian Lobu. Their venture, Cocoa Kamili, is dedicated to elevating Tanzanian cocoa through improved post-harvest practices and a direct connection with local farmers. He's a social entrepreneur, and I just recently found out him and his co-founder are both Stanford graduates. So congratulations and karibu sana.
Thank you so much. And so honor for us to be here as well, I think, as we both of us. So thank you for having us.
Asante, thank you so much. It means so much. So now that we have the professional bios out of the way, maybe we'll dive deep into the personal conversations. Maybe you can sit back now.
Okay.
Just take it easy, and maybe we'll start with Tahira. You can tell us where you come from, a bit about your journey, what you were doing before you got into the tea business, and how you decided to get into the tea business.
Cool, thank you so much. And yeah, as Simran said, very much likewise. We're totally inspired by Rosho and by you and Sabiha, and yeah, really cool to have this conversation. So my background, as you said, is in development. Like literally my job before starting Kazietu was to work with farmers and women's groups across Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, and previously Central Asia on improving livelihoods and creating more sustainable jobs. And a lot of that was like donor funded. It was for an NGO, and I think that's what really made me realize I wanted to start a more sustainable business model. And also, obviously, you know, Hendrik and I travel around the world, and we saw a huge gap in the market for ethically sourced teas and premium teas. We're also both huge tea lovers. So we collect a lot of tea from around the world, and we definitely saw potential. I mean, Tanzania just has such beautiful, bold flavors from different parts of it. I mean, we have highlands, we have lowlands, we have like different climates, and so really a variety of ingredients that you can source here. So yeah, Hendrik and I quit my job, and then Hendrik and I just we got into his car and drove around the country. And we started visiting tea farms and spice farms, and we would just take samples and meet the farmers and understand, you know, what are their challenges in the supply chain. And then we ordered some tea bags, and we started, you know, packing tea bags at home.
No way.
On our dining table. And then we just hired one lady to join us on our dining table. We were literally packing tea bags in a row. And then she brought her friend, and then she brought another friend. And then there was 6 or 7 people every day at our house from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. packing tea bags. And then finally we decided to, you know, get a tiny factory, the size of this room, literally. And that's how we started. And, you know, we packed a suitcase full of teas that Hendrik and I labeled. Yeah. And we took it to Berlin, and we just set up a pop-up shop on the streets. And we said, hey, what do you guys think of this tea? And we would just, you know, enjoy cups of tea with people on the streets. And everyone loved it. Everyone was like, please start this business. It was so validating. And that's how we decided to start Kazietu.
Wow.
Yeah. So Yeah. Kazi yetu in Swahili means our work, and everything we do is about creating jobs for women and improving livelihoods of farmers.
Was that a decision you made from day one? Was this going to be like a business and then do some good, or you wanted to do good work and then make some money out of it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. In fact, yeah. So that's the reason why we named it Kazi yetu. We never want to forget our North Star, which is job creation. And tea is kind of the catalyst for us to do that for now, and hopefully other products as well in the future.
Oh, crazy. Simran, I think you have a similar story.
Yeah,
in some ways.
in many ways it is quite similar in that I came from a background in international development as well. I moved to Tanzania. My wife and our plan was to stay here for 2 years, and I think that was 13 years ago. And I was working on a donor-funded project in the cocoa sector, but became pretty disillusioned with it pretty quickly, so quit after a few months. And at the same time, was seeing this emergence of craft chocolate, high-end chocolate, at that time predominantly in America. Companies that were making high percentage single origin chocolate, where they're really trying to highlight the inherent flavor of the cocoa bean and where it's come from, and use that as their storytelling aspect on the differential between the different bars that they have and they sell. You know, here's a bar from Ecuador, here's a bar from Belize, here's a bar from Guatemala. But I was seeing that they were all focusing on Central and South America and the Caribbean for their origins. In the meantime, in Africa is where sort of 2/3 of the world's cocoa comes from.
Yeah.
But Africa was written off as, oh, this is where you buy your low quality, your bulk, your basic cheap cocoa.
Yeah.
I said, hang on, you know, let's take a step back. There's 54 countries in Africa. At least half of them grow cocoa. You know, our flavor profile and genetics in Tanzania are more similar to old school Trinidadian genetics than they are to Ghanaian or genetics of Cote d'Ivoire. So why are you tarring off the entire continent with the brush of Africa as low quality? And so I knew that we had good genetics, we had a good climate for growing cocoa. Where we were dropping the ball was in the post-harvest handling, which is where 70% of the flavor development comes from. You can't start with a good cocoa bean on a tree. You can't start with a bad cocoa bean on a tree and wind up with a fantastic flavor, but you can start with a fantastic bean on a tree and wind up with a crummy flavor if you screw up the post-harvest handling. And so we thought, okay, hang on, this is something that we could work on. You know, changing the genetics is a long-term project where you have to do seedlings and grafting, and will take many, many years. Changing the climate is an incredibly expensive one. You're adding irrigation, things like that. But changing the post-harvest handling was something that we thought we could get a handle on. And so that's what we did. We set up, I convinced my friend Brian, who first came to Tanzania in the early 2000s as a Peace Corps volunteer, and then had worked in development, and then gone through a similar disillusionment where he wanted to look at using private sector solutions to bring about long-lasting sort of sustainable impact. And so he'd been doing some work for some private agribusinesses in the country on increasing their efficiencies and having them fundraise and expand as well. And then I brought up this idea with him, not intending to sort of make it as a pitch for him to join me, but sort of just, I'm thinking about doing this. And he called me up a week later, said, hey, let's have lunch to talk about this more seriously. Would you be open to doing this with a partner? And I said, 100%. I'm way too scared to do this by myself. I was pretty young, and I didn't really know what I was doing.
How many years ago was this?
This would have been 12 years ago. So I was here for about 6 months before I started thinking about this project. And then we incorporated it about a little under a year after I moved here.
But you got a lot done in 12 years, man. Congratulations.
12 years is a long time too, man. But yeah, we're proud of what we've accomplished. Are we where we hope to be at this stage? Not quite, but we're on the right path. Like we work with, we have registered with us about 6,000 smallholders.
Wow, 6,000.
Yeah, although that's a huge number, but a lot of them are very small. So maybe they'll have a few trees around their house. Where really like the bulk of 91% of our volume last season came from 1,500 organic certified farmers who we work with. So that's the bulk.
So if you're trying to make sense of, like, let's say I have a few like trees around my house.
Yeah.
How many chocolate bars are that convert to?
Oof, yeah. So it's roughly 1 kilo of cocoa beans equals 1 kilo of 70% dark chocolate. And so roughly. And so one cocoa tree per year will give about 1 kilo of dried beans. So yeah, about 1 tree, 1 kilo of chocolate.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I never thought of that ratio.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
it's crazy.
Of dark chocolate.
A whole tree gives you 1 kilo of.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so our operations are based in Kilimanjaro, about a 10 to 12 hour drive from Dar. That's where the bulk of our team is based. And it's in the heart of the cocoa growing district. And, you know, our farmers are all within a 50-kilometer radius from us. And that was important to us because we knew we wanted to be buying wet cocoa beans directly from farmers going through that fermentation drying process. So when we started, we put our entire savings into producing our first container of cocoa beans. And then we said, okay, cool, like, who's going to buy this now? In retrospect, we should have done things differently. We should have started smaller and gotten a more serious partner buy-in from the beginning to guarantee our offtake. In the end, we got super lucky with a customer of ours who continues to be a fantastic partner and customer of ours. But if that hadn't worked out, if we hadn't lucked into that, I say luck, but there's also a huge amount of privilege that goes into it. You know, this is a company in New York where, you know, I was able to, through, you know, birth and accident of birth and having a visa to allow me to go to the US. And my sister lives in New York, so I was able to sleep on her couch and then go and knock on this door and show up where, I'm such a small minority of people who's able to do that. And so there's a huge amount of privilege that comes with, where you're born and how you're born. And that allowed us, as well as luck, to be able to succeed so far at least.
It's so important to realize that, and then it's nice that you do this work, but also remember that there are indigenous Tanzanian people that you're trying to create more jobs for. And then you guys pay them a lot more than like a normal.
Yeah, I think last time we checked, our lowest paid employee got about 2.7 times the going wage. And our farmers, we pay, again, last time we did the math, which was last year, for the previous 5 years, our farmers had on average received a 27% premium above market price, which is by far the highest price in Tanzania. And we believed it was the highest price in Africa because we hadn't heard of anyone giving a higher price, but how can I say that for such a big continent and so on. Our whole ethos is around putting more money into farmers' pockets, producing high quality cocoa to serve the world's best chocolate makers.
For putting more money in farmers' pockets, the first time you heard of something like that was from Tahira and Kazietu's story. And that really inspired us to be conscious about how much we're paying them, not trying to squeeze farmers, not trying to squeeze employees. Was that a decision you made early on? How did that come about?
Yeah, so that actually, at the end of the day, you are creating shared value, which means as the company grows, we need the farmers to grow. We need them, literally. If I just look at it from an economic standpoint, we started it from a social, philosophy, but now very much the numbers are proving themselves. Okay. We need the farmers to be able to meet our demand, and so we need them to reinvest into their farms and invest in, farm level drying or farm level processing, and they can't do that without more, better prices per kilo. And we also. But
how does it help your product in your quality, for example? There are many tea makers since like a long time. So how do you come about and say, okay, this decision will make our tea stand out and make it better? Yeah. Is it more of a brand, standpoint, or is it like you think the quality becomes better?
Yeah, I think it's quality and it's reliability and consistency. So when we first started, 6 years ago, we would often run out of ingredients, like very often be out of stock of mint, of ginger, of cinnamon, or whichever ingredient. And that was really challenging. We couldn't take on large accounts. We couldn't commit to export containers, etc. And so one thing was ensuring that the farmers can always meet our demand. And now, you should see our ingredients room. It's like overflowing, and we never say no to the farmer. We're like, just keep sending it, because we don't want to discourage them. We don't want them to feel like, oh, I can't rely on them as my market. So, and then the second thing, you're right, is quality. And we ensure that we have direct relationships with many of our farmers to ensure that they're giving us the best quality. We bring in like technical expertise to support them, like how do you get the most fragrant peppermint, or how do you slice your ginger in a way that gives the best output, etc.
So do they prioritize supplying to you because they know they'll be paid more? Is that what it is?
A lot of them, we are their sole buyer of these ingredients, but also these ingredients are quite unique. So there's not a lot of demand for dried mint aside from us, or obviously hibiscus and these ones are quite well traded, but they are also huge volumes that we only buy a fraction of. So it really depends on which ingredient. We work with 16 different ingredients.
You compare the two markets, there's Tanzania and then there's the bulk of maybe your consumers who are outside of Tanzania. How do you navigate around that? Do you think many Tanzanians care about impact, or how you source the tea?
It's a really good point. So at the beginning, honestly, so a lot of our customers in Tanzania are hotels and supermarkets. And before Kazietu, there wasn't really a huge focus on premium tea. I think still to date, we're probably the only one that really focuses on premium tea for the local market. And so when we would have meetings with hotels to try to get them to move away from, mass market tea and more into a premium experience for their guests, they didn't fully jump on board. It wasn't just like, oh, this is great, yeah, let's do it. Even 5-star hotels, it took a long conversation to really understand, why will this enhance?
Why should I pay more for something that thinks the same thing?
And it is a huge price difference for reasons we've talked about, the farmers, the workers, etc. So it wasn't immediately understood. But I gotta say, the Tanzanian market in general, is an amazingly supportive and understanding and appreciative market. I feel like Tanzanian consumers are really changing, becoming very, very health conscious, as you've seen as well. Very conscious of impacting their local communities, and so that's come a long way for us.
For sure, I think they're seeing beyond price now. I think that conversation is in the past. I think they really want genuinely good stuff. And it's nice that the economy is growing and people have they have a bit more money to now spend on better things. So it's not more about the cheapest thing and the most the lowest quality and the cheapest thing. They want some quality. They're ready to pay a bit of a premium for a high quality product. So we're seeing that a lot in Rosho. Our story is slightly different. I mean, very similar actually. We didn't have a vast container ready. We had a few boxes of cashews ready in our bedroom. And so literally we would wake up at night and we'd have boxes of cashews in our room and try to move the box and try to move around the room. That happened because of COVID. So we got into exporting avocados and cashews. Then COVID hit, all the flights got cancelled. We were planning to send avocados to Dubai. That got cancelled. We buried those avocados. We had cashews left. I mean, cashew, at least, thank God they don't perish very quickly. Yeah. So we try to sell them in the local market. But during COVID, everyone's a bit, being very cautious about what they buy and how much they invest into what. So it was really a struggle trying to sell those cashews. And yeah, I think that's when Sabia watches a lot of Shark Tank. And I think she watched an episode about cashew butter or peanut butter. And yeah, I think that's when we decided to make cashew butter out of it. So ours was basically, we have the raw materials, what do we do? Yeah. So Simran, you decided to open a facility in Bingu.
Sure.
Yeah. So how do you make the decision? How do you come back to not just Dar, but the interiors of Tanzania, and then set up something there? How do you even manage it?
So we knew that for what we wanted to do, which was produce a high quality cocoa, we would have to control that fermentation and drying process ourselves, and that we knew to do that we had to be where the farmers were.
Yeah.
And so there's predominantly four areas of Tanzania where cocoa is grown. And so Brian and I spent a couple of weeks driving to each of those areas, meeting with local government, meeting with the different players in the industry, and predominantly meeting with farmers to chat about what we wanted to do. So we were in Kiela, Mbeya, so Kiela, Bussiness, Rungwe, the three districts that are the heart of the cocoa growing part of Tanzania.
Yeah.
We went to Turiani, which is in Mvomero on the Morogoro to Dodoma Road, went up to Tanga, and then we went to Kilombero.
Yeah.
And we got the most support for our proposed business from both the local government and the farmers in Bingu, and just sort of the geography made sense for us. It definitely was a challenge due to the remoteness of it. It was about a 12-hour drive from Dar. We didn't have electricity for the first 4 years.
Wow.
To send an email, we'd have to drive to the Tigo Tower. Now we've got solar, now we've got Wi-Fi. The drive is at least an hour or two quicker.
Yeah.
And most importantly is we've got a great management team in place down in Bingu now, which allows us to take a bit of a step back from the day-to-day, money going out, cocoa coming in, stage of the field operations. And honestly, like, if it wasn't for the team that we had in place, there's no chance we would have been able to continue.
But Kasietu is still a premium tea. Yeah. Do you ever think you can sort of share that premiumness to a more mass level in Tanzania? Do you ever see that happening to Kasietu?
100%. It's a dream of ours to start a second product line of teas that is, much more affordable, much more, competitive, much more widely distributed. And the reason for that is because we see a huge shift in consumers, especially the youth, that are really trying to move away from, energy drinks and sodas, etc., and moving more towards, just starting their day more healthy and throughout the day. So we see the potential and we definitely want to do it.
Yeah. I think one debate we have always at Rosho is, should we stick to premiumness or should we try to be more appealing to the masses? Now, I think that one of the first times I came across Cocoa Kamili was when I saw a post by Meridian. They use Cocoa Kamili. We also looked at Manoa. We're looking into chocolate. We saw they use Cocoa Kamili. I mean, so many people use Cocoa Kamili. For all we know, probably Willy Wonka uses Cocoa Kamili, which is really impressive, by the way. But it's still craft chocolate, and it's not very accessible and affordable for many of the masses. Do you think for startups and brands with limited resources should focus on like a niche, a smaller market, or do you think we should try to enter more mass market? I mean, with your experience with craft chocolates, do you think that's a decision to make, or it's just?
Sure. Honestly, I think a lot of it is driven by capital. I think a lot of chocolate makers in the early days of craft chocolate tried really hard to get big distribution, to get into, the bigger Western supermarkets and so on, and just it's really expensive, both in terms of like the capex and building out your facility to be able to do scale, the working capital it's required to then operate the facility, then also just distribution in the West is expensive. You have to guarantee buybacks, you have to pay for end caps, you have to commit to X amount of in-store demos, and that sort of stuff is really expensive unless you're well capitalized. So I think, some of our chocolates customers in the West are now available in the widespread supermarkets, but those are guys who tend to have a good amount of funding behind them.
But I've seen some businesses decide to remain in craft chocolate and premium
100%.
chocolate.
And there are people who are just really passionate about coaxing the best flavors out of it, and they're totally happy to serve their loyal customer base who's willing to pay the higher prices for that. Premium products have been around forever. Wine is the best analogy for us, or some of the spirits businesses or the coffee businesses. No one thinks twice about buying paying a high price for a cup of coffee or paying a high price for a bottle of wine. So, why can we not have premium chocolates or premium teas or premium other products? So, I also think it also just depends on the context. Some people are want to create a local business that serves their local community. Maybe they want to have a coffee shop, and that's where they think they can build a business that fits with what they want to do. And whereas others want to focus on having the biggest impact in terms of being able to purchase the most amount of cocoa and getting into the most amounts of places. And so companies, customers of ours have taken that route and focused on that as well. Some of them just have to, if you're not well capitalized, just have to focus on sort of slow and steady growth to get there, which is something that we have focused on over the years, is sort of stepwise growth rather than sort of trying to come in and make a big splash at a time.
Yeah, for sure. And I've been trying to study a few of these craft chocolatiers.
Sure.
And the more I look into chocolate, I see a lot of them pay attention to the source of the cocoa.
Absolutely.
And I always wonder, I've been curious, like, is it more of a marketing play, or is it, do consumers really care about where the cocoa comes from?
I think that people do care about where the cocoa comes from. I think that it's a unique way to differentiate your product lines, not necessarily from other craft chocolate makers, because the average consumer, craft chocolate is such a niche, small segment of the market that going in to buy a craft chocolate bar is most likely that person's first time going in to buy a craft chocolate bar. So it's like, oh, let me sample this Tanzanian origin, compare it to this Brazilian origin, compare it to this Vietnamese origin, and see like, oh wow, they do taste differently. Okay, well, I really like this fruitiness from this Tanzanian bar. Let me pick one of those up.
Wow.
And then maybe the next time they are in somewhere that sells craft chocolate, they'll be like, oh, I remember I had that Tanzanian one. That was really good. Let me try another one like that.
Yeah.
But we weren't expecting. In our office, we have a wall of wrappers from our customers from around the world.
Wow.
And I think every single one says either Tanzania, Kilombero, Morogoro, or Cocoa Kamili, or Zungwa, or some sort of identifier of place from that origin, which is cool.
Does it become like a flavor then? Is that how people choose the chocolates?
It's nice. A lot of people will choose their chocolate. I'm totally the same way. You know, I know that like I've had some really good coffee from Ethiopia, some really good coffee from Costa Rica. So if I'm in a coffee shop and I see those two origins for sale, I'm more likely to try one of those than maybe a different origin. So I'm like, oh yeah, I tried this really like, you know, fruity or whatever cup of coffee a couple of months ago from Costa Rica. So and you don't see it everywhere. So next time I see it, I'm going to try it again.
Wow. How's your journey been with capital investment? I believe, Simran, you guys are still self-funded. How's the journey been for you?
So we started the business, Brian and I, with our savings and some small family loans, which again touches on my earlier point of privilege, that we had savings and we didn't have some of the familial obligations that many other people will have, you know? And so we're super privileged and lucky and to be able to have done that. And then in our second year, we got a small grant that helped us scale quicker than we would have otherwise. And so we've been able to avoid taking outside investment, which is not necessarily a good thing, of course, you know, like maybe we would have grown quicker if we had taken outside investment. You know,
so how do you make the decision then? Like,
to be honest, like we've taken very little money out of the business and we've been self-financing our growth. And part of it is our biggest bottlenecks in the early years were around growth were around sales. And so, you know, having a big injection of cash wouldn't necessarily have helped us with our sales. And now it might be a different story, but it was never sort of a big bottleneck to growth for how we were building our business. In retrospect, looking back, maybe we should have and done some things a little bit differently and scaled in some other sort of branches of the business. That might have made really good sense, but yeah, I can't get back in my time machine. So yeah.
Are you thinking of so what's next for Cocoa Camellia?
Yeah, so the next big plan for us is we've been in the same rented facility since we began, and we plan to break ground on a new facility this year that will allow us to get to bigger volumes and also just increase some operational efficiencies. You know, our current facility was not designed for what we need it to be. And so we have a lot of inefficiencies in our workflow. And so sort of building out a custom facility that is designed for what we do is something that it's a super fun, exciting process. And it's something that will just help us as a business. It is definitely very scary though, because we're committing a large amount of our retained earnings and our savings towards building out this new project. So have you decided to maybe stay away from investors until you need them? Is that the decision you made with Ryan? Yeah, I would say that has been our sort of course of action.
And do you think generally that's a good way to think?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's totally business dependent and personal situation dependent. And I totally understand, like, you know, like again, looking at hindsight, we should have built the facility 6 or 7 years ago, but we didn't have the money for it. Like, should we have taken in outside money and built it then? Maybe, you know, maybe that would have been the right course of action, but we didn't. We had our reasons for not doing it, but maybe we would have been in a better position now than we are. But that's okay too.
Yeah. It's very interesting insight. What about you, Tahira?
I have a question for him. So is it because you didn't want to give away equity, or also because you don't want to take on debt with interest rates?
Yeah, sure. We didn't want to give away equity. was a big part. And for debt, maybe we should have taken on debt. Debt's expensive, or debt can be expensive. We haven't,
It's daunting, like you always have this.
I know, hanging over you, and it's like, well, if we can grow slow and steady and not take on debt, maybe that is the way. But in hindsight, maybe we would have grown at 30% and interest rates are only 18%. So maybe we should have, But the financial system here in Tanzania is not, in my limited experience, is not super conducive to non-collateralized debt, of course, and we don't have strong collateral until we build our facility, which, so once we build our facility, we will go out looking for cheap debt.
So from what I get from your story is, I think get to a point where you think now you're comfortable either taking debt or giving away equity.
But it also depends on your personal situation, of course. Like Brian and I had this privilege and ability to start, and the industry you're in as well, to be able to start with our savings. We started very small, but we were able to start. We didn't have to, and our wives had salaried jobs, so we didn't have to worry about where's our income today going to come from, and we live affordably, and so that's how we were able to make it. But I totally understand other people are not from the same backgrounds and need to take on outside investment, whether equity or debt, to be able to grow their businesses. And of course, that's super. If that's the route that you need to go, and you just making sure you partner with the right people for it, I think is a massive win.
Internally, we've always had the debate. We're always wondering, should we take on investment? Should we wait for it? Tahira, I know you have one investor. So how has the journey been for you, taking on investment?
Well, so we started with no investment for 5 years, and we only took on our first investor last year. Of course, we for our supply chain, for training the farmers, we have managed to get some grant funding for that, but that doesn't really impact our operations at the factory level. And it took a really long time. And I just want to give a point to entrepreneurs out there looking for investors. I think the reason we didn't take on for 5 years was because of a kind of internal lack of confidence, and that really reflects externally when you're talking to investors, especially when you're doubting yourself as an entrepreneur day to day. It shows when you're talking to investors, and I think that's why it took so long for me.
Were you looking for investors from the early
We were talking to a lot of investors. I mean, any investor that comes to town is like, oh, hello, let's meet up. And then, we would kind of pursue it. And we spent a lot of time engaging just to see what's out there. We never were approached and we never fully pursued, but it didn't come up. And I think, I think it's investors want to see confidence. They want to feel confident in an entrepreneur. And I think that was definitely a lesson learned. So last year, we really pulled up our socks, put together a solid financial plan, solid growth plan, etc., and took on our first investor, which has really been game changing for us. So it's allowed us to expand markets. It's allowed us to invest more in product development. So it's allowed us to recruit more people. I feel like people are expensive. Human resources are expensive. So that's really helped us with that.
I never thought human resource would be so tedious in Tanzania. Early days I used to speak to some businesses and they told me the biggest struggle is human resource. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And we were a team of 3 or 4, and obviously I wouldn't understand what they're saying. But now they were a team of 20, 25. I understand the human resource is expensive, number one, and also very hard to find good human resource in Tanzania. But for sure, I think, so now that you look back, do you think you should have taken investors on earlier, or was it the right timing for you?
I'm really happy with how it turned out because we, as a result of bootstrapping, we were very, very careful. Our unit economics are very tight. Our gross profit margin is very, very it's a very strong gross profit margin because we're very clear with our cost of goods sold and how we make sure we're minimizing our fixed costs and our variable costs. So I think it was a blessing in disguise. I'm happy that we grew slowly, that we were also learning as we go. So had we grown faster, I'm not sure that would have been the right thing, because I think building a supply chain takes time, building your operations takes time. And obviously, if you asked me this a few years ago, I was frustrated, I was impatient. And now looking back, I'm really glad. And I think patience is really key. Even right now, I'm very impatient as an entrepreneur. We all are, right?
We have to be.
You can't sit still. And I think really having patience, having confidence in every decision we make is really important to be able to plan forward.
I think one reason people don't take on investors is they're worried about giving away equity. Did you ever have that fear? Did you think that was something I'd give up? Or does it then eventually make sense that, they say it's better to own 10% of a watermelon than 50% of a grape. So do you feel that now, or is it too early to say?
I think it's still early, but if anyone, I'm really happy with this investor because we're totally aligned. And I think if there's anyone that, we want to get into business with, it's them. So I think I think one advice for other entrepreneurs is find the person that you're okay with that for. And it's okay to give away a little bit. Who knows what the future will hold? And I think no regrets.
I think it's true what you said about confidence. I think usually people are afraid to bring in an outsider because they're not very confident about how they're doing their work right now. And they'll feel exposed if somebody comes in with high expectations. I mean, we had an experience with an investor. I think we've been in similar circles, startup circles and investor funding, networking events, and we've always been speaking to potential investors. There's only one that we go really like far with the due diligence. We got to a point where there was the last step, the money was coming. So we got an investor who was then unlocking a grant fund. So the investor was bringing in 200,000 euros and the grant fund was another 200,000 euros. So we're taking on 400,000 euros and we had made a solid plan around that amount. And it just didn't work out. Towards the end, the investors were not very, they had some issues with what we were posting on social media. So during the whole Gaza-Palestine issue that was happening, we were posting some things in support of Gaza, in support of Palestine, and they didn't like that. So, I mean, that was one thing, that was okay, but then for an investor to get involved in such nitty-gritties about what you post on your stories and your reels, I mean, maybe it does matter, but for us, we thought, okay, maybe this is...
I think that's probably just indicative of it being a blessing in disguise and not a person who's aligned with your values and not someone you want to get into
100%.
business with.
Yeah, I mean, it was a blessing in disguise for sure, because just before we signed the papers, we realized, okay, maybe we won't be too aligned with our principles and our worldviews going forward. So we always think, okay, giving up 400,000 euros, was it a good idea? So what had happened then for us was that we then bootstrapped and then we went back to the drawing board and we said, okay, now without the money and the investments, now how are we going forward? So big lesson. I mean, also it was still a huge experience going through the due diligence. You know, these guys come in, they're professionals. They are VCs from Germany and they're all unlocking a grant fund from Germany. So both of them very thorough, very strict about the due diligence, and it sort of
helps you grow up as a business as well. You know?
Yeah, a lot of it showed us the reality of our business and things we weren't thinking about that we thought was important. So it was a really good experience, but yeah, it didn't work out. Talk about one lesson you've learned in your journey that you wish you had learned much earlier. What would it be? Let's start with Tahira.
Related to B2C or
business generally?
I think don't make too many assumptions. Basically, like when we started Kaziachi, we were like, oh, surely we're gonna find a distributor internationally. And I know Rosho goes through this too. It's like, surely I'm gonna make a good product. I know the consumer trends, I know the statistics out there. People want good products that are ethical. But very quickly we found that it was really hard to find a distributor, a partner on the ground in Europe, US. And so all of a sudden you're promising the world to bring a product to them and you're not able to do that. And so I think our assumptions were all wrong and we had to go on the ground in Europe, in the US to build a sales team and etc. And I mean, who are we? We're sitting here. Like who are we to do that, you know? And it's not perfect and it's a lot of navigating. Like I spent so much time working on Amazon ads and Google ads and Meta ads from here, you know, in German. I don't even speak German. So I think it's about, fix your assumptions, don't assume, always assume the worst, and then also build a team as fast as possible that can help you get there. Wow. And it's not perfect, we're not there yet. We have a long way to go.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's also, like you touched on it just now, like it's important to realize, you're not sitting with Mzeba Kreso over here, right? Like we're just like a tiny middling business that's like growing, but trying to do right. I would say that our biggest sort of lesson learned is that I think that we too often let perfect get in the way of the good. Like we're making sure that everything is done perfectly, and that a lot of the times that may have come at the expense of growth. It may also have been a benefit because you want to make sure that you're standing on a solid base. But I think that there definitely are times where maybe we should have moved quicker on something instead of being as methodical about it as we were. But also, I'm not super regretful about that because I think that sort of worked for, and it might have slowed us down for a year or two as a business, but it also that were the spaces that Brian and I were in and needed to be in with our personal lives and our families at that time as well. So maybe it wasn't I'm okay sacrificing a couple of years of growth to be able to have a better work-life balance for us when we need it as well.
Yeah. I have a favorite line. I say people judge in hindsight. So if one day we do become, say, Simran and maybe Tahira, then people will say, I knew Tahira and Simran.
I mean, it's coming.
Yeah, but people judge in hindsight. If we do become successful, they say, oh, I knew it, had it in them. And if it fails, they'll say, oh, this Rosho, I knew what were they really doing?
So true.
I always thought they'll fail. So I think sometimes forget about what people will say. If you think something makes sense, put your heart into it. And I think you can't sit thinking about what could happen. You just need to start with your first samples that we all did. So I think that with that, we come to a close. Thank you once again, Tahira and Simran. This was fantastic, really fun. And I'm so glad you guys shared your story with us.
Thank all of you as well. This was a fun experience. So grateful to have the opportunity.
Asante. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cool. Good job.